What's up, deep thinkers? It's Robert from Existence First. And what I want to talk to you about today is how to deal with negative energy. Let's take a few examples first. Analogies. So, we all have been to the dentist office, and when they do the x-rays, you protect yourself from the dangerous energy in the environment in the form of radiation by wearing an apron that acts as a barrier to that. And as for the technician who's doing the x-rays, that technician actually leaves the room to avoid those dangerous, to avoid that dangerous energy from the radiation. Second example, a little less dangerous. When it's raining outside, you carry an umbrella to protect yourself from something in the environment that you don't want to affect you. Sound familiar? Now, what do you do when people around you are negative? If you study self-help and you start to learn the power of positive thinking, you start to realize a lot of people in your environment are negative. How do you prevent yourself from being affected by negative vibes? Right? It's a valid question. And the answer to that is that, in contrast to the umbrella or the radiation vest, the defense towards negative energy from other people is not going to be a physical barrier. Well, I guess it could be. You could build a physical wall and not talk to them. But if you have to interact with them, the barrier is going to be up here. So in order to figure out what that barrier looks like, and my whole vision and mission is to diagram all of this one day. But what we need to do is figure out what that process is mentally. All right, so let's use an example and then dissect that. Let's say that you walk into a meeting, you've arrived late, and somebody tells you you're late. Most likely you'll have some degree of emotional reaction to that statement. But why would you? Because I could also, or that other person could also tell you something like, most ducks are yellow, which I don't know if they are, but let's just say for the sake of argument, they say most ducks are yellow. And you probably don't have as much of an emotional response to that statement. But both are equally factual, because the duck statement clearly is a fact, but then being late is also a fact, because you can look at the time on your watch, you can look at the time the meeting started, and you can say yes or no, I am late or not. Either it is true or not. It's a fact. So why would two facts produce different effects or different responses in you? Well, to answer that, let's look at how you would respond to the first one. Common response to "you're late" is, "Oh yeah, the traffic was really bad." Okay? So is that a response to the fact? Or is that a response to how your mind interpreted that, which is you're at fault for being late? You heard the statement "you're late" and your mind interpreted as you're wrong for being late, or you're at fault, or you're right, which is why when you opened your mouth you said an excuse. You said, "Oh, I was in another meeting, traffic was bad," whatever. Okay, so what comes out of your mouth gives a hint at how you interpreted the first statement that came in through your ears. Now, here's the trick. So if the way that you failed in that was you saw it was a fact, but you saw it as more than a fact, then we need to come back to seeing things as facts. Okay? So how do you do that? Well, here's a technique. You can add a sentence stem to the beginning. So for instance, somebody says "you're late," which is actually a fact. So then what you add to the beginning of the sentence as you reinterpret it in your mind, you say to yourself, yes, it is the case that I am late. You could also say it out loud, but you could say, it is the case that I am late. Or it is true that I am late. Now, what does that do? That reestablishes it as a fact, which thereby diminishes to some degree the negative emotional response from it. Okay? So, let's take another example. There's a lot of negative energy around you. You notice everybody's complaining, everybody's in a negative mood. That could produce in you some sort of panic emotion of, oh no, or oh man, like I don't like being around negativity. How about you say this to yourself? It is the case that I'm surrounded by negativity at this moment. Even me saying that to myself, I already feel a sense of relaxation or ease. It is the case that blah, blah, blah. Okay? That's technique number 1. Technique number 2. This is a funny one. All right. A common fear as people learn about positive thinking and then realize that there's so much negativity in their environment, they worry that the negativity in their environment will cause them to be negative. Well, how about this? If you go to the zoo and you look at the gorilla exhibit and then you go home, do you spend the rest of the day acting like a gorilla? No. Likewise, if you went to the zoo and you saw all of the negative people that you encounter on a daily basis inside of an exhibit and you watched them all complain about their lives, about how they don't like waking up early, about how the government takes too much of their money through taxes, about how their employers aren't paying them enough, right? All sorts of things like that. If you see those people in the zoo exhibit, you watch them complain, you actually put a lot of attention on them. You watch how they do it, their facial expressions, etc. And then you go home. Do you think you would be as worried about being negative like them the rest of your day? When I do this thought experiment in my head, my answer is no. And the answer is no because from the get-go, the whole mental frame of the situation is that this is different than me. I am witnessing this as almost like a different species, or like I am a different kind, right? So, if that's possible, then the mental technique to use would be you're surrounded by negativity, right? Instead of interpreting this as like, uh-oh, this is going to influence me, right? Because you would never go to the zoo and worry that you're going to act like some of the animals just by watching them. You tell yourself, you remind yourself, basically it's kind of like spinning, right, a ball. You could spin it one way or you could spin it the other way. One way you can spin it is people around you are negative and you say, uh-oh, I'm going to become really negative because of this. And then that will in turn cause you to be negative. The other response is you see this, again, it's a fact, right? It is the case that everyone around me is being negative, but you put the positive spin on it. A positive spin, an example of that would be you tell yourself, wow, I'm going to go really far in life because I just noticed how much negativity there is. Not a lot of people notice that. I'm learning a lot, right? Already now you're shifting, you're spinning in a mode that is sort of, I don't know, speaking well of yourself. You'll feel good and you'll feel more optimistic. Okay, so that's how you take an observation of the outer world and you put a positive spin on it. So either you can restrict it to a fact, or if you're going to make it more than a fact, then at least put a positive spin on it instead of a negative one. All right, keep using these tools, keep kicking butt in life, and last but not least, remember to put your existence first.